Oh, Pokemon. I remember back in 2016, Pokemon released an ad for the Super Bowl celebrating 20 years as a franchise. It honestly felt weirdly out of place back then. This predated the Nintendo Switch ad that would launch in the next year, and this was before Pokemon Go took off later on that year. But in between all of these corporate commercials about miscellaneous must-have products and consumables, there was like a nice little heartfelt Pokemon commercial. The theming of it was becoming the very best. It showcased young children that looked like they were up against the world, athletes ready to take on challenges, and it seemed like a nice little out-of-place throwback for the franchise that many of us had grown up loving, whether we were card collectors or gamers or just enjoyers of the anime. It was cool. 10 years ago was a very long time ago though, both for the Pokemon franchise as well as for consumerism in general. And it was Pokemon stepping into the mainstream towards a demographic that it hadn't really aimed for in a long time. Not that Pokemon wasn't mainstream in 2016, it obviously was. But seeing them opt to celebrate the 20 years in the Super Bowl felt kind of daring, almost like they didn't belong in the same demographic. But it resonated very well with the masses. They were able to connect with people that may have not done anything Pokemon related for the last 10 or 15 years. I remember there was actually a bit of a backlash online because people wanted something special announced for Pokemon during this ad. But the ad was not an advertisement for a specific product. It was more like a celebration of the franchise, which had catered towards at least 20 years worth of young children, as well as adults that had grown up and walked away from the franchise because they were no longer kids anymore. But I remember it was special. At least I thought it was special. I was in my mid-20s back then. I was still playing Pokemon games as soon as they would come out. And even though it wasn't really an announcement for anything new, I remember enjoying seeing Pokemon on the Super Bowl stage. It almost felt like a special part of my private life being shared with the world. And I remember a similar feeling in the following year when there was the ad for the Nintendo Switch. Now, my memory's a little fogged on this, but I'm pretty sure that ad had already been leaked before. I think we saw it online. I don't think it was leaked, I think it was just released online prior to the Super Bowl. So naturally, I knew what the Nintendo Switch was. I was already very much hyped for that console. I had a Wii U, I loved the Wii U, but by that point in time, my mind was focused strictly on the Nintendo Switch. I knew I wouldn't be getting it necessarily at launch, but I would be getting it fairly early on in 2017. But I think what was so special was I was watching the Super Bowl with a group of friends that either were not gamers anymore, or they were just the typical gamers that I had basically grown up with. People that now owned either a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One, mostly playing FIFA or Madden or Call of Duty. And on the rare occasion where they would be down for it, I would bring the Wii U and we would all play Smash Brothers or Mario Kart. But I remember we were all watching the Super Bowl, and I remember the Nintendo Switch commercial airing. Then I obviously already knew what this thing was, but the rest of them, seeing their faces react to it, seeing the interest, the realization of what this device was able to accomplish on the biggest stage of advertisement in the world basically with the Super Bowl, I could tell there were at least 10 people in that room that were now going to buy a Nintendo Switch, even if the last Nintendo console they had was a Wii or perhaps even a Super Nintendo. But in 2016 and 2017, when Pokemon and the Nintendo Switch showed up for the Super Bowl ads, they didn't feel like they belonged. I can't explain it. They just kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. You know, Nintendo always felt a lot more special. Like its games and its franchises was something a lot more passionate. Something you would hold dear to your heart away from all of the disgustingness that is the rest of the marketing world out there. Now, contrast those ads to the feeling of what we just witnessed during the 2026 Super Bowl, where in 2016, during the Pokemon ad that was displayed back then, the idea was to connect with an old feeling of accomplishment, a feeling of succeeding in something Pokemon related as a child, catching them all, overcoming the odds. They've specifically focused a huge part of that commercial towards children and underprivileged people. This time around, they chose all of the biggest celebrities and names that you could think of. And the ad didn't even suggest anything. It was just like, hey, who's your favorite Pokemon? Oh yeah, I like that one, because back in the day, that's what I picked and that's what I liked. I don't know, it just felt so dirty. Like it was washed up in modern day consumption and marketing slop. And in many ways, it just felt like it fit in 100% with everything that was around it during a Super Bowl commercial, including all of these dumb AI stuff that's going on? And what's up with that ring ad? That was kind of creepy. You talk about catch 'em all, that one was a catch 'em all ad if there was anything on there. But still, that Pokemon ad felt like it completely fit in. And it not only fit in with all of the other ads that we're seeing around it during the Super Bowl, it seemed to fall in line with everything from the gaming side of things, everything Pokemon related, and by extension, everything Nintendo related. Nostalgia. Remember that? Remember that thing you did? Remember that game you played? Remember how fun it was when you were a child? Come back, we have more. You can spend your money on it. There's no need for kids in those commercials anymore because we don't want to convince kids to have their parents buy it for them. You were the kids that used to have your parents buy it for them, and now that you've grown up, you buy it. And if you want, buy one for your kids too. Yeah, they're not showing Trevor Noah and Lady Gaga on the screen because they want the little 7-year-old to go to her dad and tell her to buy Pokemon. No, they're aiming for the millennials, the same way that Miles for Metroid Prime 4 was definitely placed into that game to aim for the millennials. The same way the Switch 2 was revealed by none other than Paul Rudd to the masses. Like, look at all of these stars that they have on this ad. Think about every single one of these actors and these singers and these famous people that we all wish that we were. And they play Pokemon too, so they're just like us. Think about how much money the Pokemon company must have spent to get every single one of these people in on this ad and have it displayed on the Super Bowl for the entire world to see. I mean, just 30 seconds in the Super Bowl 2026 commercial costs an average of $8 to $10 million. Well, last year, the average range was like 7 to 8 million. And that $8 to $10 million is only for 30 seconds. Reportedly, of course. And that's just for the ad space, not for the ad itself. That money was spent to fish out people's nostalgia. It was spent to remind people that Pokemon exists and have them start a conversation about everything Pokemon during the 30-year anniversary celebration prior to the Pokemon Presents coming later this month, where they're probably going to try to shove more dumb, sloppy mobile games down your throat. And they're doing it because it's going to work, by the way. None of this is to say that it's like, oh, this is such a dumb idea. No, they're geniuses because it's going to work. But you, as a gamer that loves or loved Pokemon games, think about how much money they just spent on all of that and realize that Pokemon Legends ZA probably cost less than that to make. I mean, if the leaks are to be believed, that game was about $13 million, right? Even if you double that, that probably is just about as much as the ad was. And the best part is they went out and they sold it for $70 plus DLC that cost $100, and that DLC is required to get the full experience. And of course, you gotta have Nintendo Switch Online if you wanna get everything in the game. And the craziest thing about all of that is that the Pokemon Company can afford this. It can afford both. It can afford to release the most expensive game in history and pay for the most expensive ad at a Super Bowl and still provide an excellent quality experience for the masses. But of course, they're not going to do that. They're gonna do things the Pokemon way and really the modern Nintendo way. Spend as little money as possible, release the lowest quality product that you can possibly ship out to anyone, and rely solely on mindless purchasing and nostalgia with little thought on quality at all in order to continue to flourish and make billions. Happy 30-year anniversary, Pokemon fans. It's been a hell of a ride.